She raised me to be a good man, then crossed a line no mother should. It began on a tranquil evening when I chose to embrace the moment fully. With Dad absorbed in one of his interminable phone conversations upstairs, the house seemed to belong solely to us. Perhaps it all began not with desire, but with absence. The kind that festers quietly, when a father praises your posture but never asks about your pain, and when a mother admires your beauty before your achievements. I didn't crave chaos. I craved attention, and that craving devoured me whole. I climbed onto my mother's lap in the cozy living room, sharing playful secrets in a hushed tone. She uttered, "Cease." She asserted that it was perilous. Yet, I pressed my lips against hers. She returned my kiss. In that same house where I played with dolls and pleaded for bedtime stories, I kissed my mother as though she were my beloved. The scent of leather and cologne, her scent, wrapped around me like a forbidden lullaby. She pulled me onto the bed and tore my clothes asunder. I entwined my legs around her waist, yearning for more. Her hand slipped into my pants, a gentle finger exploring and caressing my cane. In that moment, I found myself utterly adrift. I lost my sense of direction. The emotions were extraordinary, the pinnacle of my existence. I simply had to seize the moment. A twisted climax of years of unspoken glances, emotional hunger, and power games we both silently entertained. She struck me with a force that suggested she had been anticipating this moment for an eternity. But behind that force, I sensed hesitation, like she was trying to punish both of us for giving in. But it was too late. "My name is Eli." I confidently grasped all that I yearned for. This is the tale of how I dared to explore the unimaginable. Not because I didn't know better, but because I didn't care. Welcome to my channel, especially if you're just joining us. Glad to have you here again. If you're just joining us, be sure to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and tap that notification bell. Hello, returning subscribers. Thank you for stopping by. Let us plunge into the depths. I grew up in a charming castle. Far from the conventional castle adorned with stone towers or opulent thrones, this modern suburban stronghold in Chicago boasts gleaming floors, exquisite furnishings, and a walk-in closet that surpasses the size of many bedrooms. Grace and Michael crafted everything for me. The universe was presented to me on a gleaming silver platter. Gowns, gadgets, getaways, whatever my heart desired, it was mine for the taking. I had no need to acquire anything. With just a smile or a pout, everything effortlessly aligned. Perhaps that is where it all began. The notion that I might possess anyone, including her, seems rather extravagant. But that's what happens when you grow up never being told no. School remained unchanged. Educators elevated my scores beyond my actual performance. The boys looked up to me with admiration. The girls envied me. I possessed the ability to captivate an audience, altering the mood with merely a soft word or a gentle gesture. I felt no embarrassment regarding it. The hunger for power consumed me, and I relished each second of that pursuit. Because deep inside, I was starving for something real. Within the confines of home, the narrative shifted entirely, becoming far more treacherous. Mother had an undeniable charm. She possessed that timeless appearance, towering stature, robust arms, a voice that blended the roughness of gravel with the smoothness of velvet. She flourished in the world of finance, coming home exuding an aura of achievement. She was more than a woman. She was the symbol of control, of security. And I wanted to unravel her. In my childhood, she would twirl me around and affectionately refer to me as her boy. I would chuckle and melt into her arms. Yet, a change occurred once I reached the age of 18. Her embraces stretched out, carrying a different weight, as if she were no longer merely cradling her son. As if she was beginning to notice I was no longer a child. And worse, so was I. I noticed various elements. Her eyes remained fixed as I walked into the kitchen, clad in nothing but a shirt. Her hands rested for a heartbeat longer than necessary on my shoulder. She always stayed within the boundaries, consistently remained within limits. But limits don't exist when two people quietly decide to ignore them. The sensation was palpable. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The allure. It felt as though she questioned the person I would become. I wasn't too. Dad was perpetually busy, always attending charity events, participating in yoga classes, and enjoying dinners with his friends. He adored me completely. It seems he placed a bit too much trust in me. Perhaps he simply placed too much faith in his wife. The house slowly transformed into our home. Only she and I. Perhaps it was a figment of my imagination initially, or perhaps it wasn't. Yet it started as a mere flicker. I would saunter in fitted shorts, lean excessively while retrieving an item, and inquire if she finds me breathtaking in my new dress. At first, she would merely chuckle, shake her head, and treat my concerns as if they were absurd. I noticed the glimmer in her gaze, a crack in her armor. I glided by her in the corridor, and I noticed her breath catch. In that moment, it struck me. She resonated with his thoughts. The boundary we were never intended to breach. The scene had become nothing more than a haze. But that haze was intoxicating. As the evening unfolded, I wandered into the living room, wearing nothing but her button-down shirt. She reclined on the sofa, absorbed in the pages of a novel. I kept my composure as if it were no big deal, grabbed a soda from the fridge, and settled down beside her. Her body became rigid. She turned her eyes away from mine. I saw her knuckles whiten on the book's spine. "Hello there." I tucked my legs beneath me. "She suggested that you should put something on, Eli. What is the reason?" I inclined my head, pretending to be unaware. "I've confidently donned a swimsuit in the past." "How intriguing." I inclined my body forward. "Is that so?" No reply. Rose abruptly, and dashed out of the room. That was quite alluring. Bottom of form. Bottom of form. I stood by, anticipating the moment when Dad would set off for his weekend golf retreat once again. All was prepared. Wine, melodies, and soft illumination. I asked my mother to join me for a movie outing. I remarked, "I long for our moments shared." She positioned herself beside me, rigid and wary. I let out a laugh that echoed far too loudly. I gently grazed her knee while leaning in to top off her glass. As the film progressed, I rested my head on her shoulder, sensing the electric energy of her body vibrate against my cheek. "You've had too much to drink," she murmured. "No, prime literature." With a sense of elation, she leaped up and made her way to bed. Yet another obstacle, yet she was unraveling. Brave decision on the third try. The essence of a Sunday morning. Father was at the church. I assumed Mom would be in the den, immersed in a novel. I wandered about, dressed solely in delicate lace underwear and a tank top so translucent it was nearly transparent. I clutched her coffee mug firmly and leaned forward to hand it to her. "Good morning," I exclaimed with joy. She looked up and froze in place. Her eyes traveled down my form, resting on my thighs. She shut her eyes and averted her gaze. "Put your clothes on." "What's the rush?" I teased. "Are you not captivated by the sight before you?" Her jaw clenched. "I am your mother." "You missed the question," I murmured, stepping closer. I perched on her lap. She let me go, and that was just the start. No kiss that day. Left it untouched since then. But then everything shifted. I could see it in her eyes. A hunger she could no longer conceal. A tremor of something dark and tender. She dashed out of the room. The silence crackled with electricity. It happened 3 days later. Dad's gone again. In the kitchen, barefoot, grooving to tunes while whipping up a midnight snack, Mom walked in, donning her robe, bedhead alert. "You need to be in bed," she said. "You definitely should." She moved in closer. I stayed put, locked eyes, and held the moment. She kissed me. It was awkward. Unsure. Absolutely real. Once that line was crossed, there was no turning back. That night, she led me to the living room couch and claimed me. Not as a mother. As a woman. As if she were laying down a truth long buried under years of pretense. The next morning, we stayed silent about it. We exchanged a glance, a mix of shame and excitement sparking between us. I figured it would end there, just one terrible blunder. But it failed to do so. We plunged in, waves dragging us down. That was a mistake. Twisted. We just couldn't halt. I really didn't want to. Once you savor the forbidden, nothing else matters. That first night with Mom flipped everything upside down. It's not out there. It's within us. We crossed a line, and instead of recoiling, we charged forward. I woke up the next morning, wrapped in her arms. Her breath warm against my neck. Silence reigned. No words. No awkward apologies. Just an understanding. A dangerous peace. A storm is brewing, not fading away. I returned to my room just before dawn. Dad was still snoozing. I quickly brushed my hair in front of the mirror and flashed a smile. No guilt here. No sign of life. I felt unstoppable, stunning, adored. Women are drawn to what ignites their passion. And Mom, she was burning. I sparked feelings in her that Dad hadn't in years. It began to occur more frequently. I'd sneak into her room late at night, whether he was home or not. Silence reigned between us. No need to speak. She had given up. She's mine now. I knew exactly how to keep her. I'd wear her favorite colors, cook for her when Dad was swamped, crack up at her. Silly jokes, perch on her lap, feigning interest in my phone. I once left a hickey on her neck. She slathered on makeup, hoping to hide it from Dad, but he caught on. She claimed it was a burn from a curling iron. He trusted her. He always trusted her. I could see the confusion in his eyes. His gaze on her, as she doubled over at my jokes, was electric. His glare when she pulled out a chair for me, leaving him standing, was intense. He sensed it. The change. He had no idea how deep it really went. We didn't either. One night, I went all out. Dad was upstairs, deep in a long phone call. I hopped onto Mom's lap in the living room, whispering silly secrets in her ear. She said, "Stop." She claimed it was unsafe. Still, I kissed her. She kissed me back. And suddenly, in that very house where I once played with blocks and begged for bedtime stories, I kissed my mother as if she were my lover. As soon as I heard Dad's footsteps, I sprang up and dashed into the hallway. She spent days fixing her hair and straightening her shirt. He burst in a second later, his eyes darting between us, as if he could sense the truth, but lacked the words to express it. He stayed silent. Just hit the kitchen. We nearly got caught. But the excitement, it just fueled our desire for more. It had evolved beyond mere lust. A hidden realm. A twisted paradise. Ours alone. Let's meet in the garage. The laundry room. Her workspace. I yanked her into the pantry while Dad was busy setting the table. Just 5 minutes. A wicked smile. We were addicts fueling each other's cravings. I felt her sinking further. Her texts became bolder. Her stares lingered. One day, I discovered a new bracelet on my bed. No note, no explanation needed. A simple gift. I wore it at dinner. Dad loved it. Mom nearly choked on her wine. I grinned. Then cracks began to appear. She fired off questions. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling after their night together. "What's the plan?" she inquired. I just shrugged, having a blast together. "This isn't right, Eli. Just stop." She just couldn't. Sometimes she'd gaze at me, a deep ache in her eyes, as if she regretted ever giving in. But I knew better. That ache, not guilt. It was pure hunger. She was all in. She craved me like a fix. What about me? I was riding the wave of control. We let our guard down. Messy. I slipped on her shirt for breakfast, and Dad's gaze locked onto me for a whole minute. "It came from the laundry basket," I said. He was silent, but I could see his mind racing. He began keeping a closer eye on us. No more frequent outings. Cancelled his yoga classes. Weekend retreat cancelled. His eyes tracked us, as if we were strangers donning his family's faces. And in truth, we were. Masks molded by secrecy, sculpted by betrayal. Next, the mistake happened. Sunday had arrived. Mom and I just returned from the store, cracking up over a silly joke I told in the car. I grabbed her hand instinctively. Way too familiar. Way too soft. Dad caught it. He paused before responding. He simply observed. He knew and I knew it. That night, Mom burst into my room. She stayed fully dressed. She never laid a finger on me. She sat on the edge of my bed, face ashen. "He's beginning to have his doubts," she said. I kept silent. This can't last indefinitely. I shot up, suddenly feeling scared for the first time. "Yes," she whispered. I leaned in, my fingers grazing her knee, voice low. "Choose a side." She glanced my way. The silence between us thickened. Her face reflected the struggle between who she once was and who I had made her.
But she stayed in my room that night.
That's when I realized she had made her decision. Dad might have sensed the storm brewing. He might have caught the signs, picked up the whispers, sensed the betrayal in the air. But it was too late. We were done hiding. We were immersed in it. The silence after Dad left hit me like a freight train. Silence reigns above. No voice calls from the kitchen. No clink of his wine glass post-dinner. Silence. We were left alone to face the truth. Mom went silent for days. She hardly touched her food. She glided through the house like a phantom. It was as if the walls were strangers to her. Now I did it. I felt liberated when he left. I thought it proved I was right, that I had won. But the silence he left behind, it felt heavier than I expected. I took what I wanted. No one was left to hold me back. I was always the heart of this house. I was the king now. But ruling a shattered kingdom quickly loses its thrill. In the first week, I focused on getting her back into our groove. I'd rock her favorite cologne. Widen my robe just a bit more. As I walked by, I brushed my hand against her shoulder. She hardly glanced my way. She'd sit in the living room for hours, fixated on old family photos, as if they might spring to life and guide her. Why the long face? One night, I leaned in, wearing just a tank top and lace briefs, and asked her,
"He's gone.
Isn't that precisely what you desired?" No reply. I continued forward. He was unaware of your existence. "That's not how I approach it," she said at last. Her gaze was devoid of life. That is the problem at hand. In that moment, I found myself utterly speechless. She proclaimed that she had shattered her husband. I relinquished my grip. You persisted and I allowed it. You were invincible. "No," she murmured gently. "I truly ought to have stopped you." A fissure emerged inside me. Now filled with regret, I released a sharp hiss. He has departed, and I remain. She turned her eyes away. I moved closer, cradling her face gently in my hands. "This mother was your selection."
You chose me.
"I was vulnerable," she murmured. "You loved it," she said, her hands gripping my wrists tightly. "Not tough, just steady." "This isn't love," she declared. "It never was." I locked eyes with her. "So, what was it?" She broke free. "I'm lost." The next morning, a suitcase awaited me by the door. Her, full to the brim, set. I freaked out. Where to next? I stood in the doorway, heart racing, wearing her sweatshirt. "I'm getting help," she said. "I've been chatting with a counselor. I'm diving into a retreat. Time to level up." "What's in it for me?" She gazed at me, a sadness in her eyes that was new and striking. "Eli, you need help too. Beyond what I can offer. Perhaps more than anyone else can." Rage surged beneath my skin. "You're really just walking away after it all?" "I've already lost my husband," she said. "I can't lose myself too." And just like that, she was gone. The door slammed shut, leaving me alone, completely isolated.
Absolutely not, Dad.
Absolutely not, Mom. A house brimming with echoes and secrets, untouched and unspoken. Time flew by. Then weeks flew by. I called her. No response. I reached out to Dad. Zero.
Zip. Nada.
The house chilled. Dust piled up in the corners. No more cologne for me. Gave up on brushing my hair. Some mornings, I barely left my bed. I believed I could take it on. I didn't need them. I sure did. Despite all my games and power, I was still just a boy with no one to play with. One afternoon, I stumbled upon a photo hidden in the drawer next to Mom's bed. We stood by the lake, soaking up the summer sun. Dad's hand rests on Mom's back. I wrapped my arms around them both. We seemed thrilled. Complete. I gazed at it intently. I tore it in two. No tears fell. No tears here. But I felt a crack inside. A silent break that echoed pain but refused to mend. Months later, the house is still mine. It just doesn't feel like home anymore. A mere shell haunted by a terrible past. Dad never returned. Mom's sending postcards from the treatment center. They're brief, respectful, far away. She now signs them, Grace, not Mom. It's been ages since she left. I often find myself in the den, the birthplace of it all. I trace my fingers over the couch where I first straddled her, where I first whispered secrets a son should never share. Did I stop? Would she have too? But then I realize I don't want to quit. She didn't either. That's the reality we both face. Stained wall. Just paint over it. The decay below keeps spreading. What about this house? It might endure, but it will never be spotless again. We torched a family. Now we're surrounded by smoke. Dad's breakdown happened on a still day. Way too quiet. It kicked off like any other morning. Sunlight burst through the windows. Birds chirped outside, blissfully unaware of the decay lurking within our home. I glided down in a satin robe, humming a tune. Mom was already in the kitchen brewing coffee. She glanced up as I walked in, eyes darting over me with that familiar look. Guilt and desire collide. But something was definitely off. Dad was missing from his usual chair. His coffee cup remained empty, the air devoid of his cologne. I never asked. I couldn't care less. The house felt like it was already mine. Good morning, I whispered as I brushed past Mom, fingers gliding over her back. She took her time to respond. Next. Eli, this needs to end now. I paused, blinked, and turned to her. Why not? She said it in a low voice. He heard us last night. Or he's nearly there.
I can sense italià.
I chuckled quietly. All right. He's not strong. He's not taking any action. She looked at me as if I were a complete stranger. Absolutely chilling. Yet here we are. She stayed put as I leaned in for a soft kiss. Yet she kissed me back. That was it. She always kissed me right back. Little did I know, Dad had been awake for hours just upstairs. I had no idea he overheard us last night. The floorboards creaked softly outside his door. Muffled whispers reached his ears. Those giggles. A silence that roared betrayal. For weeks he had spotted the signs. But now he was aware. He stayed up until noon. His face was ghostly white. It felt like all the color had vanished. He avoided my gaze. He plopped down on the couch. He folded his hands in his lap. I stood in the doorway, cool and collected, self-assured. Hey, Dad. Is everything all right? Take a seat, he whispered. I shot a quick look at Mom. She stood frozen, trapped behind him, coffee mug quivering in her hand. Here comes Eli. I strode into the room and took a seat across from him. Crossed legs. The robe slipped off my shoulder a bit. He held his gaze steady. I craved the truth. He gazed right through me. Everything. I wasn't pretending to misunderstand. Which truth? I replied. I mentioned it just to see how things would go. His lips formed a tight line. Stop pretending you don't know. You think I haven't noticed. Your gaze on her. Her gaze is electric. I've noticed the stains on your sheets. Fragrance lingers in my bed. I'm no fool. Mom moved in. Michael. Silence. He snapped, his voice shaking. His eyes shot back to mine. What's up, Eli? Are you in bed with your mom? Chills swept through the air. Mom let the mug slip from her hands. It crashed to the floor. Hot coffee splashed across the tiles. Everyone stayed still. I tilted my head. Want me to lie? He recoiled. That was all the answer needed. The silence lingered endlessly. Mom collapsed into the armchair, utterly drained. Dad just gaped. What about me? I maintained my concentration. What allowed you to achieve that? He whispered at last. She's your mom. Absolutely not, I replied, my voice steady. She's your woman. The spark that once captivated her has faded away. He struck me defiantly. My cheek felt aflame, yet I remained steadfast. A smile crept across my face. Understood, I murmured. Your authentic self. His eyes filled with tears. He turned to face Mom. What is the duration? She remained quiet. What is the duration? He emitted a shrill cry. She concealed her visage within her palms, crumbling like parchment. Months, she whispered. He gasped, stumbling back as though she had struck him. I poured everything into you. Tears streamed down his face. This family belongs to you now. This place. You ruined it. My fault, she whispered. You went for it regardless. He let out a sharp cry, his voice trembling. He looked at us, eyes wide as if we were unfamiliar beasts. Then, he erupted into laughter. A haunting, broken laugh. It's time to call the authorities. He wiped the tears from his cheeks. I'm going to take you both down. No way. Calm and collected. I said, you care for her far too deeply.
What about me?
You never really held the reins over me, did you? That shattered him. He fell silent. He glided upstairs like a phantom. He returned an hour later, dragging 2 suitcases behind him. Mom jumped up. Michael. He shot her one final glance. Your decision is made. He shot me a glance. His eyes were lifeless. You're not my kid. He burst through the front door. And just like that, he vanished. Keep it calm. No tossing items around. No last-minute requests. Only silence and the heaviness of our actions. Mom stood still for what felt like ages. This isn't what I wanted, she finally said, her voice hollow, almost like she was just thinking out loud. But neither of us had stopped it when we still could. But you didn't halt it either, I murmured. She glanced my way and I caught it, Miss Chance's disgrace. Something's breaking deep within. Yet she still didn't ask me to go. She still didn't declare it was over. We had obliterated him. And we stood strong.